maybe we join this or time to be. What is but this one okay, yeah, that one later on. It's okay. This one, no problem. But then Kasinyama Tango Duntani is a Shana Terra, and then the Chulo less at an Tachi Jumbaso, was curing witches on Kangala Kuchi Kondas.
So again, I was saying initially this was supposed to be a 2-week break as announced initially, but when Gena went away, he had problems getting back, so so it took a longer time. So I just want to apologize for the longer delay than was expected in getting back to the teachings.
Oh yeah. Sanje Choda Soya Sona Chanjo Pato Tane Jaso Daje Chujenje Sonanje Tola Benje Tobara Sho Sanje Choda Soya La Chanjo Pato Tane Jaso Chen Daje Chujenje Sonanje Tola Benje Sanje Tobara Sho Sanje Choda Soya Sanjo Tane Jaso Chen Daje Chujenje Wala so Tayan Tan Gade Gade Para Som Gade Bodhi so Tayan Gade Gade Para Som Gade Bodhi so Tayan Tan Gade Para Som Gade Bodhi so All so Simja Tamjaga to the Tojalana Macheva Sanje Gomar Moja Chineka Tobarcha. And that day Chedo and by Janjo Sembe Labjana, but Tushi the Nam to Lango, Langola Shingo, Symbol Togo, Toga Tuju Manawach Godu, and the Gasu Baba, and I guess it's Chimboshawala, Chunju with the Tesha Chimbi in some chat.
So as always, we begin with setting our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment, and knowing that in order to do so, we must perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings in turn, we must have a very thorough understanding of what they are about, and we can only gain this understanding by being able to rely upon a non-mistaken presentation or text. And so it is with this in mind that we are here this morning to listen to a little of the teachings from the great text called the Bodhisattva Way of Life, as composed by Master Shantideva.
And that Namjun Nation Channel and doing the letter to Swashin just said that Namju Chetu was all that in Nation Channel Combustion and Rangi Dungi Nankala, more and getting Jazza Lama Yambala Naba. Tapkela to the Chimbo Tomba Shaja Tuba, and Kula Chugu Tojo Shaja China, and Casade, yes, and Yamshalata to the Kuzanova, Kula Chugu Tojo so much, but what's some of you, some sort of Combustion.
And as we normally do also, we set up the merit field in the space in front of us. Here, in actual fact, our own root guru, but in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, who is there, the normal, the body of and robes of a monk, with one face, 2 hands, with the right hand in the earth-touching mudra and the left hand in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. And we really have the certainty that the Buddha is really there present.
Ordinary conversation, that in the general Gaja. Ordinary conversation, and the Ranga Tagotoya, and the Jigger, Sedi Pamane, Chebe, and the Jigger Casota, Taiva, Magan Semja Tanja, Masawa never you, some conversation.
And of course, also in the space all around us are all kind mother sentient beings, from our parents outwards to all those we know and all those who we don't know, that they are also present around us.
Maybe have a little bit more detail. Maybe on this picture also good way. See.
This one,
Yeah, little bit more. Ah, not good. Oh, wonderful. Yaoru kubaseso.
Ah, so,
Ah, Malaysia ne delishe. Chumushto.
yeah.
Ane te kasate. What the chat? Ane ranga duna said the lama tuba umboti. Ane chiwo temba chiwo kabu temba mo tuga hung mo yiga sum the seta. Tuga hunle ane wese padu meba duna. Ane chig shingram meba ishiba. Onla the chaba jan jan ane the ishiba the lama tuba mo namba jan ti. Only ongo chulama children mikiwa weekend what is the
And so the main figure of the merit field, the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, is marked at the crown by the syllable Om, at the throat by syllable A, and at the heart center by the syllable Hung. And from that Hung center at the center, from that Hung syllable at the center, light rays emanate, going out into the pure realms, inviting back the wisdom beings and the empowering deities. The wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
What is compassion? And then Anjik don't be Kuson to get you in there. Then Raji Batamjala Tawa, Shanti, what there to like the Tabakova, Kula Tujish when Yerima, Panta Mata, Tamjala Twins again, don't be you in there to get the tip. And Ranga Tago to you, Teacher Magasim Jata, and Jaja, and Chikasoreta, Tunga, Gue, Tunga, Chaba to Jigga, Tunga Saba, Nasu. To get it, Tarwata, Coachita Chela to make a Nasu to get the compassion, and Simjal maybe Ninja. Do not set a lama to be on Kuson to you and ten, and Tawa, Yishikitava, Mudukatava, Tendeshi, Kitchen, and Simjatam to make you that Java Chimor, Tawa, Tawa, Shochi, Tawa, Tali chicken, Tedachan of Lama to be on the Jingle. What is compassion? What are the compassion? Jingle up to so what is compassion?
So in contemplating the central figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, we have a deep appreciation for the qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, of how they have no fear of suffering in reference to themselves, are skilled in means in removing the fear of suffering of others, who work for others with an unbiased mind and with great compassion, and who benefit others regardless of whether there is any benefit in return. And so these are some of the characteristics of an enlightened being. And we also, from that then, develop this sense of pure faith, of manifest faith, of the faith of conviction. And in viewing all the sentient beings all around us, we are very aware of the different categories of suffering that they are undergoing, be it the suffering, that pain of body and mind, the suffering of change and pervasive suffering, in particular, that which keeps us in the round of cyclic existence. And that this develops that sense of compassion. And we think how wonderful it would be to be able to fulfill this kind of compassion. May it be the case. I'll see to it that is the case. Please, O Guru Deity, please bless me to make this so.
What did I say? What are the names? To make you the Java target, Java short, Java target chickens, target chickens, so the chicken to the Simja Tamja, Simja Chija, Java Tamja, Damatunga Tamja, Java, Chemadu, Kongu Nesuru. That the jet over the Sudos of Lama to be on the combat Toba Yimna, and Simja come down Meba Bala Neva. Chita Washington Kangu Yoba and Shandy Bemer to Juk to. The names are to be able to combine and to a chicken, some water, to a chicken, some teacher, Junju showing the singing of Konchok. What is it?
And so, of course, we wanted to, really how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings are free from suffering and its causes, or being able to establish happiness and its causes. May this be the case. I will see that it is so. Please bless me, O Guru Deity, to make it so. And that we can make these aspirations to kind of like very, very sincerely to attain these ideal situations. But of course, it's all too real for us that we can't even do this, of establish people in happiness and its causes, of remove suffering and its causes from others, even for one individual. But when we see the position from which that is possible, we realize that it is the state of enlightenment, the life of a Buddha, because only from that perspective can the Buddha see the dispositions and the personalities, the karmic implications of every single decision that is made, and is able to, as it were, diagnose what needs to be done for each individual at a very detailed level, and also to be able to do so, effortlessly and spontaneously. And so it is therefore the only option left to us is to definitely attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings with that level of competency and skill. And so therefore, this is the motivation I set myself now, prior to listening to a few verses from the Bodhisattva's way of life.
Lama Tubia Umbo, Commissionbangana, what I say, what Tangalazo mute the Lama Tubia Umbo never combat the Tobiacheto. Or something to Tobiacheto, what are the Junjushun yet, Namache, what in the music? And
so just to be aware that we have that presence of the Buddha throughout this particular discussion, and also that our goal, of course, is the attainment of that state of enlightenment for the purpose of benefiting all sentient beings. Tsering that's also so baggy.
What the legend, what that Subenamle, what it Takanja, Tanda de what's called Tanda de Junjogi, Liu Chui, Tani, Junju di, and Ma Tango, Janju Sem the Getchabo Contagion, and then the Janju Sem Tombale, and Janju Sem Namso Lene, and Kochik, Gaso the Pageant to Yamne can just check who you meet. Tadiga Janju Sem touch by your Echido. Janju Sem touch by your Echido, Takanja, Janju Sem Kene, and a Kebate Casodata, Paje Meva Chene, and it Casoda Takanja. Because of the Pache that Jang Chubas Rota, because of the touch much, Sanje Kusun to you and the touch much to be a Lataka, Tiganga, that Namso Lanko much. Namso Lanko Yobachi water, go Yobachi water, damn good one. What that in the Imbajiza Reta, what a dinner, the Sushi get up, Kanjachiga. Because getting what it was that there's a mother. Nega will charge away now on the Dewa Dugu Yore, Tunga Dugu Yomari, and the Yamasa, the China ya, and that the Yams Lavana, social payment of John Tawan in the regiment, what Taduni, that Sanjay Gutoich. Semja Tamjigato, Sanjay Kumatoya, Kulototi to Tapajo. That the Casoda Tamarazu, Jungu Yomari Mendo, sent at the Machina top meeting at Redwa. Top meeting it. Langaniba meeting at Redwa. What I think is the Zukumba can't do get better change. What it is that the name that I didn't want to survey Yamlechinant. Rota survey Yamlechinant, the new to what in the that's Sumba Party. How much I love to Ness, how much I love to the top and love to Ness, love to the Shijana, Sobala love to, Sundula love to. And Tumonda, Tumo Maebe, Shenegatibe, Samja Lasata, Tumonda, Tumo Asada, Tagata, China Tumo Asigua, Samja Mushida Sheneta, Tumo Mayan Bazata, Casote, Takaja, Tumo Mayan Bata Takaja, don't need a me Shenetu Sungu Yorba, what is it to be love to dance at and Handola love to stop, don't you do it, Handola love to. What is it? Takaja, that what the or the legend Takaja. That tomorrow, China Shenet, the Hando said that China tomorrow Chaterwa. China tumo so da Hindu da Jain da namba tumo cha de da xian de lang do se de ya de ka so de Islam da de ka so de Yishu gu chulo na la xian de da lang do de de in de se bu ji ge song ye sa ma de da zo da de Hindu gu shong lu zhang jian ba ri ba jian ba jie zha ba din zu gu shong jie Hindu na le na da ga ne xian ge de ka so de Jain chulo jie 가서 다 간제데 가서 감솜 켈링게 출로 줘라 감솜 켈링게 출로 됐다 좀 와다 되감 소감 소매감 숨게 도단 켈링게 줘라 디 유튜브다 그때 송고에 켈링게 출로 되는가 좀 와래도 봐 감솜 켈링게 출로 되게디 좀 와래샤 와 투모다 봤다 가자 투모 와서도 다 원들 지나 투모 하지 지바 나 투모 하지 다 투모 많이 받아 아니 말다 디 두베 데다 년종다 가서 다디 두베다 타바다 탐색 좀 해줘다 두베 데다 가자죠 돈 많이 벌어 차대로 안 되는 한동데다 돈이 더베 신의 두다 돈이 더베 한동 어디래지 두베서 삼된 로서 한동죠 뭐 셔라를 납조사 다 산동 달 한동 뭐 셔라 달 한동을 지다 지나 두모의 한동 용거래 신나 투모 가서나 미과 신내 좀네 안에 한도 통데 미과들 미시뱅안에 엔들 제바체네 아니 미과들 마요와 제네 제도도 한도 시르와 하바 통화 신내들 하바 통화 다다다들라 다 투모 마이벨 한도데 다 시르고 두베 투모 한도 다 돈이 두베 아다 한도데 샤우여와 동영 거 시르 라 컴줄로스 왔다 데 sabject 거는 숨도와 어들레체
So the way in which the text of the Bodhisattva's way of life is really all about how to generate and then apply the mind of enlightenment. We start off with the early chapters looking at the how wonderful the mind of enlightenment itself is, looking at praises to the mind of enlightenment and then the taking of the vows to generate that on our mind stream. We looked at the earlier emphasis chapters on generosity and ethical conduct, mindfulness, alertness, etc. And so now we have come to the and so the goal is that once we generate that mind of enlightenment, then we set out to perfect the 6 perfections. And so it's really about how to complete the perfections of ethics, generosity, patience, and so on. And so that there will be no obstacles to do that they can be brought to their fulfillment, and that this is the main practice. We understand the ultimate goal of that practice. But in the meantime, also, we can experience less suffering and more happiness. And so, but we always try to engage in our activities of the day with that mind of enlightenment, combined with the perfection that we are trying to practice as the cause, and a cause for what? For enlightenment itself. And because we have reached a point where we understand that there is no alternative, really. If we really want to benefit sentient beings, we must attain that state of enlightenment. And so this is in order to inspire us to continue with and sustain such a very powerful effort, and so on. And so the different perfections then, as is announced here at the beginning of chapter 6, chapter 6 of the Bodhisattva's way of life, it talks about how to engage in the remaining 4 perfections. And these are named as the training in patience, the training in enthusiastic effort, the training in on the common and uncommon mental quiescence, as the very heart of the perfection of concentration, and finally how to train in wisdom, which is in the nature of special insight. And so here, a little clarification with regard to, what is common and uncommon meditative equipoise. So here we'd say that the concept of meditative equipoise, as well as the causes to develop it, are common to not just the Buddhist tradition, but also the Hindu tradition, the Zen tradition, the Jain tradition, and when it is unlikely to be found within, say, Islam or Christianity. There's simply not the teachings there to bring that about. And essentially, we kind of say that the common kind of strategy or layout for developing mental quiescence is confined to those who accept the three realms of existence, being the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. And so within those, then they have this layout, this strategy for establishing mental quiescence. Now it remains common, depending on what is the focus of that mental quiescence. And so when it is, and this goes for special insight as well, that when it is kind of focused on various kind of kinds of analysis, it is referred to as a common mental quiescence combined with that special insight. But the special insight, the uncommon mental quiescence and special insight, is exclusively focused on emptiness, on gaining a realization of emptiness. And so it's understood that this is combined with, of course, founded on renunciation and so on, and the development of that level of concentration, that mental quiescence. Then we apply that to that unmoving focus on our object, whilst with the special insight being able to engage in analysis at the same time.
당부들라 sabje ni kone liu shung shaba liu chen shaba ta liu shung shaba de la ni chen asa nyebu tuba tang nyebe ge kwa soba kom wa lu lang lu jawa tang ana soba tube tab yi la jawa 당부들라 ni chen konju nimi tang sobe pen samba 당부 konju nimi samba de la sumchen ma tongwe nimi Nimi do de Tembawa, Matombe Nimi de la Nijana, Condru Gewa, Gerda Jombatan, Anna Troada Sube Gun Shen, Suba Kombala, Beba Chawas, what I can the subject or television, what Sungudo Nikones, or Sungudo or television.
And so with regard to then the next set of outlines, we're looking at the chapter. This is going to be focused on the perfection of patience. And this has two main sections. First of all, an explanation of the text of this chapter, and then secondly, an explanation of the name of this chapter. The first of these has two, again, headings. The first is the kind of to really earnestly apply our meditation on patience in order to overcome obstacles to our both establishing and to stabilizing antidotes. And secondly, the actual method for establishing of cultivating the method of patience. And the first of these has two subheadings as well. First of all, looking at the faults of anger, and secondly, looking at the benefits of patience. And with regard to the faults of anger, there are three subheadings. First of all, the faults that are unseen. Secondly, the faults that are seen, and then a summarization of the faults. And so with regard to the first of these, the faults that are not seen, we see how anger is that which destroys the roots of virtue. And secondly, on the one hand, looking at the fault of anger and looking at the good quality of patience, and knowing that we dedicate ourselves to putting every effort in to habituate to patience.
다 통행님이다 마통행님에서 다 마통행님에서 마통행님에서 다 간제 저 최케말랭간다 아니 겨왕가 저 케말레나 또 가보요래다 가보요와 다데 켈링게 짐바시 샤첸첸 오다 숨고요래 다 디인도 켈링게 짐바시 샤인도 레다 장조 선배 냠네 지게서도 거 겨왕가 저 켈링게 뭐 시샤로 근데 이사다 사실 동에 말에 무튼의 동에 코안에 마타는 무튼의 동에 연구도 쓰도 거 겨왕가 저 켈링게 뭐 시샤로다 아니 디 온도 지도되는 랜드가 남샤될 연구 열받아 안데 임바인도 되는 거기 가서도 디바 좀다다 디바 좀다는 것도 통고 요말다 근데 오늘 가서도 체매 기보지라 때네 로아 체매 기보지게다 담고 말아서 나시 임발라 아니 저기 아니 너무 그냥 타자 세 윤대게 차탐자 톱에 아니 체매 기보된데 저기 아니 탑람 고랑게 콩게 냠뇽게 래 아니 체매 기비 쓰버다다 롱라 땡고 요바서 또 어떤 때들이잖아 아니 개발때 가서도 개발만 비게 아니 개발 좀 주고도스 어떤 데가 이직을 남네다 미국에서 차대도 체매 기보지 또 또바데 체매 기보이 뭐 뭐시 뭐와 될때 아니 될때는 아니 될 이직을 때는 아니 그 콘도 사바이나 아니 랑 겨워 뭐 겨워 좀 주고도스 좀 하기도스 가서 콘도 사이에 가르잖아 사고 알았으나 나를 경을 하기도서 콘도 사기 열봐 경을 하기도서 콘도 사온데 어다 콘도 사와 있는 딜레 경치하라기도 다스 딜레 경치하라기도 다 콘도 사기 문도 다스 저 다른 가서나 경제 삼로 마당아 제전 남자 가서다 옹비 셰바 호랑 말 소소로 로라 마바 실내 온데 남자 콘도 사기 열 경을 하기도스 다들은 옹비 셰바 삼라 참마 샤바잖아 이게 경제 삼로 땅에 대치도 오호 다 조금의 경 되고 문도나 콘도 사나다 딜레 경치하라기도 다 콘도 마사와체네 콘 아니 콘도 데 소소 콘도 되토나 키란치 보자라기도 들 구갑제 도다스 다 금전 삼로 땅에 땅 예반예답 제들도
And so in terms of issues like where it talks about the faults of anger and how anger destroys one's virtues, roots of virtue, and so on. Here, for people who don't accept any spiritual tradition or don't accept past and future lives, it's very difficult to get their head around this kind of concept. And so it's kind of like, from the Buddhist point of view, accepting past and future lives is a kind of foundation, one of the foundation stones, as it were. And so when we understand that, we understand the possibility of continuing suffering, from life to life going on. And of course, that introduces us to the whole concept of cause and effect and the acceptance of karma. That we can understand that negativities arise through mental affliction. And, we can understand that good qualities arise through the accumulation of virtue. And all of this becomes a reasonable system within which to, start to refine our mental attitudes. And that from the kind of valid reasoning of holy beings in the past, we can see that they are speaking from their own experience. They can see how virtue can be destroyed with this anger and rage and so on. And that, that they, started off going like that on the one hand, that we get upset when we sense some loss to ourselves. And so that's one issue. But then if we allow anger to take hold, that's a whole other additional issue that we have to deal with also. So the holy beings from their own experience realize this. So saying that anger is really not useful in a situation like that at all. It just makes the problem much bigger. It adds fuel to that fire. From our point of view too, we can see how operating from the physical senses, we can be very sensitive to everything that's happening externally that can have an impact on our kind of well-being and our state of mind. And so anger can easily arise there when we have some dissatisfaction or we're not getting what we want, etc., etc. There are so many avenues through which anger can enter our system through those senses. But we have to start to encourage ourselves to pause and let the mental sense get into it and start to use logic to say, if I'm allowing anger to arise like this so readily, is it helping my situation, or can I deal with it better if I remain calm and so on, and to be more skillful in the leading of life.
control 사야돼 모두 점자상다 control 사야돼 라나 영어라고도 control 사가 열봐 라나 영어라고도 control 사한테 다 control 사와이나 영 딜레치아라고 여봐야 하거나 안 control 사야 고갑도 영 말다 점자 삼다나 레도와 점자 삼다나 레도와.
So it's kind of really saying, you know, anger arises, and it's because of some sense of loss to ourselves. But if we allow that anger to take hold, then, you know, it's kind of saying, but this is going to be even a bigger loss to you, isn't it? So it's kind of we are appealing to our reason to see that and to kind of say, okay, well, that's not a good choice then to allow anger to feed itself in that way. And so I apply patience in that regard. I'll go for the mind training.
Today in the because of the country name survey paying just some time to that got Jumzen some time and only Shabarala Chanda Yong Horamidua. Only Shabarala Chanda could come to Garana or did some young digger water. That remember China because some nearby stanza make only Shaba Gedilla because of the Chamasha Chene. And Jumzen some time March and go. And so lega Jumsen color and a cat do don't do some down there and a coaching when it on a chat cook up you take it. Maranzo jumps to say Kibutaba and got when they Kibutaba Yamanos, they should let them go a chick and because of the Chiwakunde, Nomo, Shawan, you take a chick and that jail and Casodeta or then lunch and a Tigumoto that. When I done a you can shoot those Jumzen on a chick, Nichi, Sumche, Ganzam, on a coaching Jumzengi, Tilla, and a chick, Jesutane, and a coach only Shabatam, Chamasha, Jumzen on the Jesutan, or ta, never think so much in Yenatan. That you would about the Chabarwa. Then around so yeah. Lela bota mare ngozo de nyomolo komba shukchombo za lela bo yo mare de ina ya ngozo ke de gan jong me de gan ji zo jumzen ne ngo chue de ba jumzen samlo ta na ngo chue ye ta jo o ta de ge ga jero wa gu ga jero wa ta wa ta di samlo ta na an o de da yong sa de sam subject yo gu wa ta.
So anger arises due to us feeling that we have been with something kind of deficit to ourselves, some kind of loss. Now we kind of really, this whole chapter is about putting reasoning into the mix instead of just our, you know, straight off knee-jerk reactions in all of these situations. You know, but as far as, you know, looking into the faults of anger as they're laid out, or the benefits of patience as they're laid out, this isn't really the milieu of our physical senses, because they act on first thought, isn't it? What the eye sees, what the ear hears, and so on. It's kind of very direct in the way they interpret their reality. That is not helpful in dealing with anger. So we have to learn to kind of really insist on that pause, that second thought, whereby we can insert the reasoning, the valid reasoning, where we can look at the profit and loss of the situation, depending on how we're going to react or respond from here on in. And so this is the work of our mental facility. And this is so important that, that and we can't expect to be experts like the holy beings of the past at the outset. We are very much beginners on the path. And so it's kind of, important for us to kind of make the effort, but also to give ourselves a break. When we say, if you keep going, the first time you'll react and you'll allow anger to get in and to take over. The second time, a little better. Third time, a little better. And before you know it, when you've had some experience, you can insert patience prior to any hint of anger arising. But that takes time and it takes effort. But, it's the process by which we can apply reasoning to the actual situation in front of us and see what is the potential profit and what is the potential loss, depending on how we respond from here on in. And so this is very, very important that, when we are especially, prone to losing control because of our mental afflictions, we need to thereby, invest in reasoning to be able to counteract the many instances of anger that beset us over any given day. And to also see that opportunity is always there. Like when something untoward or negative happens to us, or with some injustice arises, that we have an opportunity there to deal with that issue skillfully through valid reasoning,
Konchok Geshe Jombata Konchok Chua the Sube Geshe the Soba Kumbala Pepper Chawata Tambodela Konchok Geshe Jombatela Kiabaton to Sava Chinda Deshe Chola so Lecture Kaya de Guja Konchok Jombachias.
And so, yes, we are beginners. We are at the beginning of the path, and therefore, naturally, things are not going to be easy, especially in the context of, anger, developing, cultivating patience. But, that we must be dedicated to putting in the effort. The first of the verse of this chapter reads, whatever wholesome deeds, such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity, that have been amassed over 1,000 eons, will all be destroyed in one moment of anger.
And Geshe Chovala Sobeda, the Geshe Chovala Choba Sobe Lecce, Kiwa Condition Baina, Janjus Salami Conduci Kiabaina, and the Jungres. Conduci Gesa, Zawane, Jomba Chaba, Jongu Yabaza, Condu Kobala Peba Chawas, Takaja, Sosu Gulun Yabu Kene, Energy, because of the Tungdon Chigil Chairman, Gawa Lapchimotan the Due Europe, and also because of the Nyanjon, the Janju Semda Yang, Dege, and it's because of the Kunelane, and it's the Shebe say you saw you have traded the Kundala Soba Dendela, and it's Chatsawala Soba Janawata, when a child to Sosu Nyanjon Kunela, Janju Semba Kunelan, but charges. Charging Saba in there, and a dengue dog guitar, and also Kulungu dog, and a Sanjay Julo Doya, Desamaze, and a jig, Sama Java in a yam, and a jig, Duke Jandanebe, but on the Sig Sashila Matobe, Duke Jandanebe, and the Castle, and it's a college gave you. Gavalne, that didn't get that pay you part of the Sumudwa. That didn't pay you part of me about your Dinzo Yang, and it's a Tamewa Jig, and Geshe Dani Chimbochilla Konchok Kebaina. That you get a Dani Chimbo Imbaina, Konchok Kebaina, and Keba Tongi gets a jump to it. 딜레 숨도와 다 딜레 숨어도 수계세 단위 전부 뭐 셰싱 말봐 셰싱 말봐 셰싱 말도 안에 딜레질라다 가서도 즉 가서도 몇 가지 개발이나 컨트롤 개발이나 다 뺏어도 용 침몰하기도 원래 안에 계세 단위 전부 멤버 인바이네야 즉 가서도 다 컨트롤 개사 유티 심지어 란데 냠바 진바이네 타메와 진바이네야 그 디바 봐도 멤버 사진 다 쳐버려 딜라테네 간사 디에 디바 사주고도 소소 디바 사오 마세 간사 디야 야 콘도코네 라네 디바 사주고도 라지 니가 녀바 치기도
And so here is saying, just to take into account what is at stake, that all the virtues that we have accumulated with, very well constructed virtue, with the motivation generated very purely in terms of generating, powerful virtues such as renunciation or virtues in relation to the motivation of the mind of enlightenment, etc. Prostrating to the holy relics of the Buddha, all these different kind of virtues that we have accumulated, that even in previous lives, being a wheel-turning monarch, and the powerful kind of potential for virtue that we have fulfilled in those lives, also there. To kind of really take into account the great bank of virtue that you have accumulated, and that's saying that if you have one moment of anger focused towards a bodhisattva, that then 1,000 eons of that virtue will be destroyed in that instant. And the issue, of course, for us is that we don't know who is and who is not a bodhisattva. And so it's very important then that we take care with regard to all our interactions with anybody else, and that there is no anger involved from our side. And also, of course, if we have, anger towards somebody else, and even if they are an ordinary being, that's very likely to provoke a reaction from their side. So not only have you the anger, negative anger cause from your side, but you have inspired a negative anger cause from the other side as well at the same time. And so you can see how insidious and destructive that anger is.
다 된대 망부지라 녀모게 주고도 좋아 거 찍으려면도 거기서 뭐서 소셜 애니멀스도 하다 찍질을 때 봐인자 안 코라라 저와 이게 망부지요래 다디서 거찍 지금 감각이 막이 봐서 아니 랑래 저와 이거 망부 네가 막이 봐서에 다 간자 지금 네가 가서 삼다는데 지 가서래 지금 녹차 차도 더 중고도 와 콘로 지금 사바 있는 녹차 차도 용하지 요거도와 뭐다 간제 가이나면나 다 간제 지금 다다디 가서 배바데다 나란조게 지금 마통 얘기 아니 라는 경치부터 가라 그래서 소소 개왕가만 남다 안 체들라 개와 좀 되게데 아니 매워서 그랬어 되게 경치부터도 왔다디 경치부터도 와 what 자다 되게 가서도 되게 들라 삼로다네 왔다 간제 지금 코도 사나 마티에 아니 다가는 신을 와다 다가는 신게 말아줘 답변은 지가서도 장주선배 냥네 지게 장주선배 도마 켈링 거 아니 디제도 다 간제 코도 사나다 가네틱 삼삼치 나 로아다 가네틱사 간제서 코도 산데 사도 셈제들 마구바 지고 열와 마구바 지고 딜라 가사데 가소래 딜라 마구바 지고 열어 딜라 마구바 지라 잖아 딜라 편바주가 로컬스 용도 그래 다 셈젠데 개 침부 쓰잖아 아니 딜라 편바 탐제 쪽에 동양 탐제 싸워져 대화 탐제 두고 있으니까 간사잖아 배제 콘도 용해야 되다 값이라 용하러 왔다 값이라 용하러 와 나디 같이 숙체 속에 아니 콘도도 숙중도 중도 아니 콘도 매바 차지 오고 왔다 그래서 디 대화대 소수 대화대 개발하면 차버려 와 그 현재의 제원도 아니 디 대화데 아니 소수 대화데 개와 매근 차도 아니 디 동네 대화 소수 동네데 개와 매고 차버렸다. 안 되지도 거 용사 매대에서 다디 매버잖아. 아니 란전제 숙청 몰래어도 아니 샬라 마고 발레야 샬라 통존래야 아니 샬라 내바게데 용되게 왔다.
So, of course, it's one thing that we need to be aware of. It's just how pervasive that anger is. You know, we are social animals, as Kenneth pointed out, and that, you know, it's kind of like we have these relationships free and easy with our friends and relatives and so on. But, you know, there can be so much anger involved there, and that can be, you know, so destructive. So kind of like when it talks here about this outline of the unseen faults of anger, it's referring to the previous virtues that we have accumulated. Now, they are completely eradicated when anger has its place, when anger arises. And so we have to see what a big loss, how unprofitable, how detrimental anger is really. And so, you know, when we have generated the mind of enlightenment, when we have taken vows and so on, the Bodhisattva vows, then whether we're directing it ourselves at somebody who has those vows, or we holding those vows generate anger, it has so much more destructive capacity. And so it's kind of very, very important, because at the heart of anger is a kind of a deep disrespect, isn't it, for the one towards whom you're directing your anger. And when you have that disrespect, there's no possibility of benefiting that sentient being. So that's kind of counteractive, you know, to the very vows that we take. You know, we generate the mind of enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings, to attain enlightenment, to benefit all sentient beings, to benefit them, not to harm sentient beings. And yet here we are in a situation like that. You know, you can see how much it completely reduces your opportunity to benefit, which is, again, something that needs to be taken into consideration. And again, it's worthwhile here delving into the concepts of self-cherishing as opposed to cherishing others. You know, we can see that, you know, what we're aiming to, what we need to develop is the mind cherishing others. And we can see in that context, there is absolutely no role or place for anger at all. And we can see that, you know, it's through self-cherishing that we generate these attitudes of us and them, of me and other. And therefore, the disrespect and the anger towards others, you know, can be very easily generated when we're in that self-cherishing kind of mindset.
그래서 삼았던 거야. 이제 계좌 좀 세대 아니 지금 가서 개와 좀네 아니 지금 뭐 맞을 하대 왔다 줄 쓰고 연아야. 네가 지금 똑같다 도와. 배나 개와 장주도 거나 개와 장주도 거나 아니 개와 좀 두고 말했잖아. 지금 제가 송고 열봐. 좋아. 개와 조장도 거 봐이나. 개와 좀네 아니 미미비 개답 산제 공부 줄로 뭐 잡아이나. 아니 개와데 저거는 조사 마도 파도 다 매버서 두고 말했어. 수고 열봐. 다다다데 계속 좀씩 수고도 와. 근데 뭐 마지갈 수고이나 되는 다 줘도 야.
Okay. So it's saying here, yeah, in terms of when it talks about root virtues, as it says here in the verse, being destroyed, that there is an explanation here too that must be added. And one is that it's talking about the virtues that have not been dedicated, especially towards full and complete enlightenment. And so this shows the importance of dedication as well, that if we have generated virtue, it's very important for us to dedicate that towards enlightenment, towards attaining enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. And I said, once those virtues have been genuinely dedicated towards that goal, then they are not destroyed.
No, what are 미시다 다 간스 다 간제 계획자 좀 개발 동기 계획자 좀 쓰는 다 간제 야나 저기 코에 디기기 줄라 줘야게 계획자들 좀 쓰고 얘나 가서나 그 코드 가소래 다다디 가소래 레다 베나 소소게 뭐에디 베나 개와도네 베나 테바침베 촌냐네 지가나 개와도 조사랑 뭐거와 뭐거레데 개와도 조사랑 뭐네 사이드 에펙트라 아니 가서데다 가서데 아니 조상 마도고 봐도 야 코알레 디기 규디게데 용디게로 와도 사이드 에펙트로 용거도 봐 야나 조상라 뭐 저디 마뉴에체 사이드 에펙트 가서데 아니 코웨기 디기게 규용을 들어야 뉴그레스게 요나 내가 제가 제일이야 같이 세우미시다
Again, yeah, then again it is kind of looking into also, you know, talking about the root virtues that are destroyed in a situation where you have dedicated your root virtues towards enlightenment. What then is what are the repercussions of anger? So it speaks about, you know, our goal, of course, is to attain the state of enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings as quickly as possible. But should we not attain that in this lifetime, and then also there's the side effect of all that beautiful virtue that has been created that will ripen as happiness even while you're in cyclic existence. You know, you have the conducive conditions and so on. Now, if anger, if you've generated anger, though it does not destroy your root virtue because you've dedicated it, yet again, as pondering, would it then also have an adverse effect on that side effect of samsaric happiness? It certainly, of course, because you know, the anger that you have is, and once you have it in your mind, there is no possibility of happiness in that time, at that time when you're, you know, entertaining anger, as it were. But it may also have an adverse effect on the kind of happy resultant causes, resultant fruitions in cyclic existence.
로아다 자주가 셈다 년종 마싱을 pen 돈이 또 베셔럽게 심바이나 개와다 타베 줄어줘야 돈이 또 베셔르다 자주가 셈 니가 그 심바이나 탐제 개베 줄어줘야 줘봐다 야 덴데가 마싱베 개와 망고 줘봐 야 디게 좀 그랬어 그요나 디가 삼탄고 해제도 와.
So this needs to be thought about, you know, the concept of the destruction of root virtue. It's going to say so on one hand, the undedicated virtue will be destroyed. Again, there's also thinking that, you know, once you have a motivation, which is a combination of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness, that's kind of virtue there. May not fall into this category of being destroyed by such anger as well. So it's kind of something that needs to be deliberated on.
Kind of manner. That in a young the Kondo sound and church while again to get the same order, same color she didn't net to your mind, and so kind of get to head on to get up at the Gaso the Nomongi, that Nomongi Jabio catches me to your mother, some of the that's what you want to tobacco Mindua. That gets that jumps, Tatilla, some time you already to the inner, but no, you want to touch over it. No, you want to touch over it. And it's 가서 람귤을 줘보게지나 람 장을도 다에 람 어다 봐도 해야 되는데 자지 자상 봐 그러다 다 되게 좋다 단다 야는 가서도 뭐 맞게 줘 되게 하대 봐 야나니 가서도 뭐 제가 이마이네 뭐 제조 되게 되어다 이나 사이드 에펙트 개와 용해야 되라 개와 동네에 다 되게 되 누구요 봐 다들 저 그래서 내가 미시 sometimes.
So I'm not saying that I know all the ins and outs of the kind of karmic kind of possibilities here, but you know, one thing we can say without any doubt is that anger is harmful, that anger is a negative that anger is 100% an obstacle. And so in the case of, like, for example, talking about destruction of root virtues, it could also refer to, obviously, if somebody is angry and they're trying to engage in Dharma practice, that they are kind of like contradictory. It's not possible to engage in decent Dharma practice with an angry mind. So it's an obstacle to engaging in Dharma. Therefore, it destroys the virtue that hasn't even been created yet. And that, it's like that which is also, of course, a fuel to other mental afflictions, and therefore absolutely harmful. And that, also bringing into that consideration that even if you have dedicated your virtue correctly, that anger, nevertheless, may be that which is something that destroys that side effect happiness, that interim happiness that would have been yours otherwise in cyclic existence. So it's saying here that whatever way you look at it, anger is kind of persona non grata. So it kind of like it needs to be, very much kind of like put to our own in our analysis. It's very big, but we can say that 100% it's harmful. We can say that in terms of the karmic results, that from a cause of anger, your fruitional result will be negative. Your environmental result will be negative. The cause that is the cause that is in harmony with the action and with the experience, the experiential part of that result will be negative. And so with the combination of all these aspects of the results means that you are forever going to have obstacles to spiritual practice because of that anger. So you can see how it kind of has this life beyond itself as well that will interfere with your spiritual progress. The second of these two outlines was the faults of anger, the good qualities of patience. Through understanding them, make efforts at habituation to patience. Verse number 2 states, there is no evil like hatred and no fortitude like patience. Thus I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience.
Nyomoba jomba lasla nyomoba pa meba soyela ane koso je nyamen je nane ane soba tabige ane je katu sada kamela sese tuba ane Nuba Chimbutita, or Sobatabi, Katu Santa, Kalel, La Pat Casodata, Chicaso Kalega Takasoda, Tukurche to Majakarta, Ningdop Sura, Tukurche to Masoresta, Best Casa de Suetubat, the Katu Beba, Devena, Sobacomba, La Nedendo, Tabnato, that's the day in just Soba combat. Because of the Geshe would see them. Correct, and tap not so when a summer matana, so come to Maris, Lela, which Babinsa, tap not so bad, Tuja and combat, tap not so when any some look down, some look down, bedroom judge and so go by the Chegurmado, Timino so come to Maris, they will go by the paper chawas.
And so this verse is pointing out how, on the one hand, there is no negativity like hatred because it destroys virtue. And that so it's kind of like pointing that out, that there's kind of incomparable with any other because of that fact. And likewise, saying that there is no fortitude like patience because it destroys mental affliction. And so therefore, we really need to earnestly apply ourselves to developing, cultivating patience, and to be able to approach the topic from various different ways, in many different ways. It's kind of very, very, very important. And sort of that, that sense of courage of mind is important in terms of patience, to be able to kind of really bear you know, the various vicissitudes of life, and also that's kind of that fortitude, as said in the verse, and saying that otherwise, you know, if we don't apply ourselves in this way to using very different ways, various different analyses to choose and to cultivate patience, then otherwise it won't happen for us.
Taka Shedans in the Ranju Gawa Joba chicken, and Ranta Nyawada Nyason La Soba Yana, because of the call Mutin never chicken, what Dungengi, that Dungen Kanga, and it's because of the chicken tower such. What are the Shedan chatting? What Shedan? Then you may use Janju sing with Yalan chicken, get that Chishu, that Shedan chatting. Captain just a young manager, Shedan. Rotten is that Janju sing when Yaman chicken chicken, Shedan cook up take your matters. Come matches. Cook up trying take your matters. That Shedan the canal, Rota Shedan the Takanja, Yongsagi, cook up to the Marta Vachena. He cook up the Javayina, and the judges and Yamle Jetu your marriage. The cook up matching Bachena. The cook up the Takaja. Shedan la Guga Majimba Jene, telling Yabutan and Sobakumachikuras. That did the legend did that because of Tatuba Chimbuson or that Namne Jene, and about the Namne, the Malu Bachana, Kanchimana Tonle Jetumala, Katuba Chimbosigua, Ruata, Tonle Katuba Chimbosigua, Kangela, Sentuba, and Kangen D, and it's because of the Tigigene, running Yamela Pachemachet. Gange di rangi nyamlela ani tunjen la chane kegen la mando chet so ba da katub mesa katub sig de gange kale chama tongle chet mo katub sig wata gange kate so re wata shema mongol le to go de kondo se le to to ka bo do kondo se le to ka bo do ro ka bo do lam jang ji me 바로 그다 살라고 다고 그래서 다 되네 지금 말려버지 제도나 아니 그 냠내데 갈 가점 용토에지 그러와 되네 되게 그다 가자 저 디지글 레바이나 아니 셔마칸가 오스 여바이네 되게 아니 거기서 다 죽돌 마서는 안기 쉬울 때 차도다 안기 그가 사다 됐네 세단에 사주 거지 그러와 Pena the chas in the Yaboda Yamari, Yina Yang, 디야 최주에 튕겨를 줘야 또서 요래 컨트롤스 그 최주에 튕겨를 줘야 요 말이야 셰단 되자 쓰는다 되게 되냐 거치 강사 코랑 탑 켜봐 요나 강사 코랑 남주 야보 요봐 이나 탑 켜봐 요봐 이나 탑 켜봐 이나 탑디 온게 되자 디야 거가서래 지금 최주에 튕겨라 되자디 생활도 맞죠 와자 되자 디 아니 가서래 생활을 마당 와잖아 되자 디 온게 야 가서데 랑 되자게 생활도 마당 와잖아 되자 디 온게 야 지금 가서데 최주에 튕겨라 줘도야지 용투 요래 나 세단다 코로라 속바된 속에다 가서다 그래 너무 파지티브 시작하잖아 딱고 용할 거 봤다 콘도도 용할 거라요 말이야 다 세단 람케르스지 용거데 다이나 다 다다데 내가 또 로가레다 다데도 소 코로랑 시작하잖아 콘도랑 시작해 숨고 열받다 가자 어텔에서 왔다 가자 지금 가서다 가서 랑 비댕게 간사데 개와 좀 받지게 지그라 아니 세단스 들레지 시작하잖아 왔다 들레지 시작해도 왔다 다디 최초에 튕겨를 두고 요 말에 딱까지 요 두고 요 말한테 생활도 조시고요. 그래도 아무도 컨트롤 사차도 되는 거기 거서다 가리네 셰두근다 지 가리네 네트고 용두고도 용도 호텔 다 된데 인사 왔다디 나라도 장주가 생활 냠네 지금 다 냠네 매번 요견 다 셰단스가 다 그거 맞게 받잖아. 그거 마셔야지 셰단 와다디 개체 못해서 뭐야 와들 뒤제도 봐이나 다 가자데 가서래 가서 다데 까투바스 딱 까투 까투바 쳐버려다선 딱 까투 다 되네서 소바다베가 소바가 냠네 제레 하가 까투바 요 말스다 그래 와들 숨다
So this verse is really pointing it out that there's no negativity like hatred, and it's kind of like not just in terms of that the virtues that have been destroyed from the past, but that it also is that which, of course, sets down the causes for our being reborn in the hell realms, in the lower realms, and this continuous, not just being born into a continuous, inconducive environment, but also that sense of the habit of mind of continuously being angry and having hatred. And so it's kind of saying here that the lesson from this verse is that one must never, ever give an opportunity for hatred. That's simply it. There is kind of no ifs and buts about it. That in all situations we must cultivate and become absolutely expert at applying the antidote of patience in those situations, and it needs, absolute dedicated practice to be able to do so, and that in all sorts of situations too, when it talks about the second half of that verse, or the second line of that verse, where it reads. And there's no fortitude like patience. That word fortitude, it doesn't quite get the kind of what's implicit within the Tibetan words there, because it means, yes, you have that courage and that fortitude to be able to handle everything that arises for you. But it's like there's a great deal of skill in place in that fortitude as well. That one can turn all inconducive conditions into conducive conditions for practice. And so it's kind of saying here that one accepts all problems as opportunity, not as something that will irritate and destroy one's peace of mind, but rather one is enthusiastically seeing through those problems and seeing how they can be put to work to cultivate the mind. And so that's what it means in that sense of courage and that sense of fortitude. And that, and of course, we as beginners understand only too well how important the development of such a mindset is, because of the how immediately anger, can take hold of the mind. It's like a flash fire, it's so devastating and so quick. And so it's kind of important. And there's a distinguishing factor here too between anger and, say, desire or attachment. And that if one has skillful means, one can actually use the energy of desire and attachment towards turning that particular mindset towards the Dharma. But when you're angry, when anger is taken over, there is no avenue back towards the Dharma until that anger is gone. And so there, that's something that needs to be taken into account as well. This, of course, is bearing in mind that you don't fall under the sway of that desire attachment, that you have, you have it in the mind, but you have control over that. And so you can say, okay, I can turn this towards something good. And it can be a conducive conditions for Dharma. But when anger is in the mind, there is no conducive condition for Dharma. And so it's kind of like really, we have to understand that anger is that which leads to all and every kind of harm.
Rangi samlo tang samlo kalesh tana kondo sagito kondo sagito samlo tono yonde jirwa pajoge kasade pajoge jele chugo mare pajoge yugo ngone jele chugo mare pigele rada legede ene pigi lyudela chig dabe pine da chig jeba dela rangi tatang tone anu kondo shuk chejung saye anu kondo masawa yonge diga soso samlo tang jola rali shiul lede to ra chiul lede to That and go also Deva to Yore, Domin to Yomare, and did the Samuel Condesitana and Condo Sagimindu. Samuel Condesitana Condo Sagito. To get together, Marazo Yamungo Tone, and because of Betutang Shimachi go to.
So it talks about here too, this verse about, thus I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience. And really it says this is absolutely true. We can, all we need to do is to delve into our own experience. And they, again, as pointing that out, in that, it's our own thinking that gives rise to anger. The other out there is a small part of that, the way they are looking or the way they are presenting, but it's our own thoughts. We decide to let anger take over. And so that's, we have to look into what happens just before that. What are the external conditions in the other situation that tend to give rise to the unsettled mind that leads to anger in me? And what is it that, it reduces that level of anger and keeps me peaceful? And that sense of keeping that sense of well-being. And so that's our job. That's the analysis that we have to go from our own experience. What is it that triggers me? What is it that helps me calm down? And so that they are the kind of like the little kind of minute wins and losses that we need to work with. I was going to say, after all, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we want happiness and we don't want suffering. So this is part of that job.
아니 거기 야 지금 세마지마다 컨트롤사대 용되지 로다 로아 다데네 해서 거기 가서도 지금 배를 지금 세지가 내게봐 이내다 다가저 랑을 증여셔봐라 직도셔 같이봐다 내게봐 이나 내게봐 데일 때네 컨트롤사바이나 컨트롤사다 마사테 소소 삼로당에라 할래디 삼로당단데 오 지금 내게봐데 소소를 지금 팬토고 여바제 나와 차소나네 야 콘도사사 매디겠지. 다 어디 지게데 소소 뇌계도 삼로 다운도 다 뇌계 뒤치 말이 니 말이 어디다 야직 삼로 다운도 야 콘도사 되겠지. 어디 가자 그 소소 삼로들 라시 우리 레데기도 와. 파조데 게레도 와. 그봐. 다 파조데 게메 받잖아. 파조데 문에랑 게 유인바 이나 콘도 유인바 이나 삼로 가르당에 뱅가 말이 콘도사 그래. 다 코트도 파줘대 가서데 콘도 마사에 차기도 콘도 사에 차기도 코겐 차대어 유차요 말이 자다 간절에 콘도랑 게 유대랑 게 삼로당다들 라리기도 와 삼로당다들 라리기도 와오 삼로당다들 라리온데 직대 근데 당안에 신데 안 지금 세번에 개반에 가르쳐봐이네 파줘되게 녀몽의 상황도 존에 직 제대로 열어 야는 맛이 몽배 온게 지금 열어 야네 거 녀몽의 상황도 존에 지금 열어 다 가지 지금 열어 다 소소로 내 돼야 야나는 거의 너그 옆에다 한 먹어 몽바 가서래 이글로르스게 돈에 지금 열어 야매나네 거기 너그 봐 하고 봐 이네 집에 있네 코 녀몽의 상황도 코나 라마 매바지 제모도 안 돼서 너그 잡아 코나 라마 유네 잡아래 매바지 잡아래 다 라마 매네 잡아 이네 콜닝 제가 유착도 봐 왔다 되는데 그 라마 매네 잡아대 그 뭐트에 유딩지래 다들 그 좀전 지금 초망고 지나자자 로까지 다 되나 쇼를 가서도 나초배 출겨서 나초배 거나 삼로 당와 이나 오늘 전에게 지금 콘도데 맞 용사 매되겠지 근데 이제 왔다 용사 매봐 인사 왔 된데그推게는 공부래 삼로 당고래 숨고도 와 어때래
So of course, from our point of view, how we respond or react to external harm or that which is, undesirable in our minds. We have to kind of see that we are the ones who have the ultimate say in what goes on in our mind. That we can, so say somebody is harmful towards us, we can look at that and go, there might be something beneficial out of this. Now, once we enter into that way of looking at it, that does not give any doorway for anger to arise in a situation like that. So, but in exactly the same situation, somebody is harmful towards us, and we go, yeah, I must deal with this with anger. I must kind of be forthright and say, this has to be stopped. And so anger is going to go through that doorway very, very quickly and take over. And that rises. But we can really help the situation in 99% of these situations where we are being able to see that what's happening with the other is just a cooperative condition. The substantial cause for anger rests solely with me and always in that situation. So we make that very clear distinction. And therefore, that if I am responsible for the main cause of anger, then I have to take responsibility for what I'm thinking, what's going on in my own mind. And so that, that kind of like is the more we, as it were, allow anger to kind of have its say in our own mind, the more that it will be a continuum in our own mind. It will continue on and on. So it's very important to kind of like really understand, just like all the other, that anger there is a mental affliction. That is that which afflicts the mind. And so we need to be able to, always understand that whether we have control or not control over the arising of anger is in our own minds, it's in our own hands. And that's what is meant again by being able to look at it from various ways in various situations. So like, for example, the other, they're angry, they're harming. Are they in control of what they're doing? Or are they under the influence of their own mental afflictions? It has to be the latter, isn't it? They are operating out of control. They're controlled by their own mental afflictions here. And therefore, they can't be held completely responsible for what is occurring. Therefore, I don't have to respond with anger towards that. That would be inappropriate in a situation like that. So kind of like we're using every avenue available to us to be able to make the right choices at the time, and to never allow anger to be the one who is the spokesperson for what's going on in your mind.
다들 이마에서 컨트롤 세컨드 제우르와 다 유디 랑게 삼로 땅땅라 되는 용되기도 다 삼로 땅땅라 되는 용되도 삼로 땅땅 컨트롤 사에 지금 삼로 땅와 이나니 컨트롤 사기도 다 삼로 땅땅데 컨트롤 마사지 삼로 땅땅의 컨트롤 사기미도 다 되는 이마에서 컨트롤 사에게 유디 소소를 두고 소소 삼로 땅땅들 두고 다그 맨은 미중을 대화 중대하러 주 텐데지요나 저거도 맨은 미중아 요거래 주 텐데지 까와이나 저거도 맨은 미중아 저거도 녀바도 요거 말해 다 진짜고 맨은 미중아 저와 중삭이 디 아니 랑이 귀나네 아니 저 가서도 삼로 땅땅에 찍는 용대죠 다디 까고 요다 디 까와이나 아니 코도도 까두고 요 가서나 유도나 저거 도도 그러와 다디 도마도나 아니 저거를 랑 요 말해 코도도 용거래. So
it's also going to be viewed extremely directly to understand that anger is the result of the cause of our own thinking in our own mind. And once we accept that, we can understand what to do. That if we prevent the cause, that is our own thinking in our own mind, then anger cannot arise as the result. If we don't deal with the cause, our own thinking in our own mind, anger has no choice but to arise. So if the cause is dealt with, there can be no result. If the cause is not dealt with, the result has to arise, has to become manifest.
야나 아오다 파조디게 아니 단데데 소절은 내가 계겐디 계레 주소 말했어도 어다지 주면은 디면은 아니 내 삼로 당다데 연구 말해 삼사 연구래 이나 다지 삼도 다 소소 냠내 봐라 다 냠내 봐서 가르쳐서 피기디 파조디네 소절 꾸는 가리 이미 남아도 내고이나 평균은 다디 소소 삼로 당당도는 패매줄라 배주 당토에 다 냠내 박을 랭게르 와 백치스나리 승들 랭게르 와다 되래
Also, the one who is harming, the harmer out there, is just a cooperative condition. That's all there. Through my interaction, what happens thereafter is under my control. Right? So if I see myself as a practitioner, I have a responsibility to make sure that this interaction turns into a positive, something beneficial out of that situation. So that's another way of thinking about it.
Yeah, 내가 삼로 된데 아니 컨트롤사에 주 용해데 디기 너바 께네요 디면에 디 용거 말을 삼사 용거로 왔다 왔다 디지도 디면에 디 용거 말을데 이네 디 용어들 때는 소소 냠내 맞춰 와 디면에 소소 냠내 봐 부르 그러시게
So another way of saying, that this whole scenario, of course, has arisen due to cause and effect, like everything else. And so it's kind of like, it's like almost like a test for me. I'm a practitioner, therefore it's my responsibility in this situation.
말에 당어도 아주 되는 정도로 와. 내가 되는 컨트롤 사이에게 아니 삼로 코리에디 네 전에 말했어. 가서 나한테 거기에 파줘대 걸 몇밖에 와서 용하랬어. 아니 그 밝게 되는 삼로 컨트롤 와. 어다디 말했어. 피게디 게래 피게디 아니 소소라 가서도 녀모게 줄라 만도와 전에 아니 녀모 좀에게 아니 줄라 배주 땅투에 다 고갑지 되버려. 찬스.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like saying really to turn the situation on its head, to move from the normal reaction towards somebody else harming, that immediately, we point a finger and say, you were the one who caused anger to arise in me. But to completely go beyond that, completely, and to use the situation to see that person as just a condition, the cooperative condition, but you do not generate that substantial cause yourself, but rather to see it from the practitioner's viewpoint as a kind of a test to see, can you prove that you are the practitioner you like to see yourself as, and therefore do not react with any anger, but to see the benefit of that as something that really adds to your store of patience.
That dilatene, and that dilatene pajogi sosola never get what the social pentosma. Pentosma. I can't just dilatene social gal lapchamos, seven yamle lapchamos duptoso. And seven yamle that J Google Jongso, and Taganashing Sosuke, and it Gunatana Yamle by Yabochimbe that proved the Tenetonswa. Right, Yomarwa, that is.
So what's the upshot of that second scenario? One, the person who is attempting to harm is disarmed and they're benefited. That's something that can be rejoiced in. Secondly, one has, moved one's patience on, become a lot more, powerful. And that, of course, we have taken the opportunity and we have proven ourselves as a worthy practitioner in that instance. That's the hard acid test. And so there is now the opportunity for rejoicing in that virtue.
Kuno yaboje gewa ne gewa sagre ta kuno duja ji gewa yimba inane ta koran ge le tang je ne ngara zo pemba tuk de ba cha ba so ji ta koran le tang koran diba sagre ba koran le tang je ne ngara zo pen do so cha do ta.
And so like that person too who has been angry there, that in a kind of harmful stance, and there of course we see they're accumulating negativity through negative motivation. But because of your more enlightened response to what's going on, that you have released them, as it were, from the further harm to themselves, because of your responding in that more enlightened way yourself. So it's a very win-win situation.
Mare, Marta. Ta pajo digi social never give it. When it's social newness on the jiggy or day, social money was a social pant of a chavarwa. That social pant of a charter, that pajo de Koran Lutan, that Koran Dunga Juna Tigre, and that meet the pant in his Labanese. In some of the town your Marte, your social jetang the tone. Gewa to by Inza Pajo Koran Lutan, another pepper to was chatting, pepper to a tunge chawas.
So that the other then in presenting anger towards us, and we having taken the opportunity to turn that into something beneficial, it is like as if they have manifested in a way that is going to be of great benefit to us. So it's kind of something that also we can see it in that way, that we have been able to Yeah, so it's kind of like we can, you know, as it were, low down. So to let that all go, because we have been able to glean the benefit from that situation, from that person. You know, there's no kind of grudge, there's no holding on to it.
Because Koran and Gozol Nebaja, Koran Dibasa Yora, in a Dibasa, Yima, in a Koran, Yora, Yorte, in a Ngarazo, Papa to Vecheta, Koran Lutan what was Takora, Lutansana, Koran Kanachuna gave me to Kiran Pent on the ticket, what that did also Chang with what.
So it's kind of like that person has accumulated negativity because of the anger that they have generated. That's a fact. But because benefit has accrued from that situation, then that we can kind of from our side leave it go. There's a kind of like we have not kind of fallen into that trap of anger, as it were, but have been able to get the benefit from it. So it's kind of something that can be let go.
Oh yeah,
so let's leave it there for today.
That get you the Gazana, Gaso the Lojon Tsigemana, so done the Simjan, Tamjel, Jino will elevate, Jojo to Sabay, Tato, Java Simba Show, that Simjan, Tamje, Gaso the Takaja, Jino will have don't show the Juvenda, somebody, Tato Java Simba Show, and what in this one is that Lojon Tsigemari, Nala Swan, and Jinja, what the Simjan of Guba, that was Simjan Sash, would catch him with Sigana, and control that to get it up. Yongsa sha meeting ta yongsa ta diga gaso na ngaso le tangbo tangyang che ane tende ge samlo khaya meeting che ro ta rang digi jona shen ka to na ma ta tende jo de control da diga yongde semje she de ba cha chi bo su ke chi bo shu chi be rang ge ane che digi khoa ge ne ga se ne digi jongsa ke ane be shingsa da bo yin ba ta ba da tamje che ba duwe ne de ge ane be jobsa ge ta shin ke chi bo jin ba Shebayina that took the younger one for the Latin board, in a beautiful to the young some meeting. What got the catch you the same jet the catch him by what and Narazo and the Lu is from the same jet Tamjak Sunday combat to begin, 10 years to be getting some Chibayina. Control the cup to come to the also the younger again that turned to a younger the shook about the young Sakura meeting. That catch you the Sem Chan, Janju, Sem Go, Sem Jet, change in Basamota yet. That range, Teddy, was the Digijuna, Dungachuna, and a condition, Sem Jet Tamjak to the Sunday Combat to be Janju, Sem give a Kuru show. Don't need to be Shera give a Kuru show. Instead of Pembatan, Samatan, Chibayina, condition with the young Sametin. That to choose to start, let them ways again the Teddy Young, that the beautiful Degmalamja, condition over the young Mari. These some of the last one of Tayugurda.
So really, you know, part of course, you know, what's behind all of this is, as it says in the 8 verses of mind transformation, like Geshe Langwe Tangpa, is this capacity to perceive all sentient beings as even greater than a wish-fulfilling gem. And therefore to maintain a sense of very powerful sense of respect and appreciation, to see sentient beings as that precious, that anger would be seen as completely inappropriate in any situation with regard to sentient beings. So this is also very a powerful way of kind of rebasing our cultivation of patience, and that you know, of course, as beginners, it's kind of not possible to lead a perfectly non-angry life at the outset. You know, that we will have, you know, the kind of momentary flashes of anger, but what we should concentrate on is that they do not last long. They do not remain in the mind, that we don't feed that anger in any way, that it's kind of extinguished as quickly as possible. And so, and that's something that we need to dedicate body, speech, and mind towards us, and to really make aspirational prayers that we may have all the conducive conditions for our practice, that we may avoid all inconducive or obstacles to our practice, and that to really go to take it sort of like as the most important factor of our practice. That was a central kind of pillar of our practice, is this, as seeing all sentient beings as kind mother sentient beings who have been unbelievably kind to me, and therefore I need to repay that kindness, and that can't happen if I'm angry towards them. So it's kind of like here to see all conditions that arise for me, whether they are happiness or suffering, as conditions that I can grasp as the opportunity for cultivating the mind of enlightenment, the wisdom realizing emptiness, and that may it always arise like this for me, that I can see all these conditions, whatever they are, as conditions for cultivating the mind of enlightenment and cultivating wisdom, and may they be continuous in my life.
아니 지금 로다 간자제 감정 좋아해도 가봐 개와는 동해를 맞아보자 동해 교회 동해 잡아도 지금 동해를 맞아봐 인사 아니 델레 녀바 좀 다 델레 타나도 마타나도 타면도 거알 마타나 타면도 서로 공부하시네 아니 녀바 좀 연중지 공부하시 된대게 녀베 로데 라는 지고 뼈마다 벼지라 교수 삼사차 아니 지금 다 간자 지금 지난 거 저근데지 뭐 이나 유대는 로바서 뒤서 요만에서 커다 쳐봐 삼다 어떤데게 데 가자 가zam치 로다 그저 유대는 두바이나 거된 거에 뭐도 거된 거도 그 유대는 맞으면 다된 거 열어서 막 커다 쳐봐 삼다 안되는 예벨로데 라는 지고 안에 님의 좀 뭐냐고 같이 교수 써서 근데 진짜 가슴제 탐지기도 산제 공부하니와 또 맞도 토바지기 상상 공부하시 안디 내가 dum바데 다외지 뭐냐 강아지 교조 서서 반대서가 라마르르 다게 지워 빼면서 그렇지만 고소 투정무도 자도 순대체는 랑게 동네 난갈라 라마투베하고 거 쇼바데 레 순대체도 아니 담배 가서 패 니베 가서 쇼 순배 가서 땡도시나 산제 고마마도 버데 제수 송수 섬사체 아니 양라도 뭐 메데데 저 피거든 차
So then we begin the dissolution process, and so from first of all establishing the appropriate seating arrangement on our own crown. Here we contemplate the suffering within the 6 realms of existence, knowing that they are in the nature of suffering itself, and that whether it's suffering of change, or pervasive suffering, we come to cognize that and to develop this sense of wanting a definite emergence from that renunciation, to get beyond cyclic existence completely. And that is symbolized by the lotus mandala seat on our crown, knowing that all internal and external phenomena lack any objective existence, and they're merely imputed by thought, and going through that short contemplation to reach the mere negation of the object of negation, to establish the sun disk mandala seat. And then this aspiration to attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings, the mind of enlightenment itself, is symbolized by the moon disk mandala seat. And then we can offer supplication to the Guru deity in front, the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, to come to that prearranged seat. Oh, glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, and the figure starts to move across the divide. At the end of the second, they have arrived at our crown, and at the end of the third, that they are seated there, and we have the sense that they will remain seated and steadfast until we attain the state of enlightenment itself. At this point, we rejoice in that, and we can now offer the mandalas and the 7 limb practices.
such position to idan guru tenam de la nian da ya me so le o de cha ta ya la do me de da cha pi 통제다 창작원의 주의 시험을 제조하고 통제다 통제다 장기중 뭐 40%씩 주제부터 들어가는 상으로 이단 거로는 들어가 니야다야 미스 워터죠 다들은 야조 공부를 시에네 아니 지금 감소 조화리도 가봐껴봐 있네 동해를 매대와 인상 딜레타에 자 딜레 마타나 타면도 삼사전에 아니 년종지 공부시 과를 예봐줘 년종지 공부시 아니 랑네 닝라 랑니데 빼마다 되지라 교수 삼사체 지나가 주 근데 유된 조건 두장 말에서 커다 줘봐 삼다 어디는 된대게 가서도 예별 로데 예별 로데 아니 랑게 가서도 니가 빼마다 되도 님의 좀 약하고 교수 삼자 심지어 탐지도 산재 공부마다 또 요한이도 마다 통마다 토바지기 삼사 공부시 된대게 두바데 다외 좀 약하고 반대 자외 라마를 보지 다게 니가 빼면 되죠 근데 좀 무슨 도정으로 짜도서 선도자 선도 담배 가서 집어내 마저 니가 가서 수도가 된듯이 산재 공부마도 봐도 제수 송수 가고 되네랑 니 빼마다 되는 남주 니 내다는 신체 대 가들라 도지가고 정하고 가게 안디 타고도 아니 가서다 어떤 배청아 다에도 오문문서 다에도 이거 숨지 거대 그때 나한테 거대 그때 알아봐서 나한테 잡에 그 순간에 거대 그때 얘다만 해도 저거는 마샤만나 이 소스 근데 나한테 거대 숨 거대 같이 어떻게 공부하셔
Then we begin the process of establishing the Lotus Sun and Moon Disk Mandala seat at our own heart center. Here again, contemplating that once within cyclic existence, we cannot get beyond suffering itself. And so developing that sense of definite emergence from that realm of suffering, cyclic existence, we develop renunciation, and that is symbolized by, again, the Lotus Mandala seat. Again, knowing that all internal and external phenomena do not exist independently or objectively, even at the atomical level, and they're merely imputed, that we have this sense of the mere negation of the object of negation, symbolized by the sun disk mandala seed. And then the aspiration, indeed the determination, to quickly attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings, and developing that mind of enlightenment, symbolized by the moon disk mandala seed. And then again, the supplication verse thrice. So glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. And then with the first of those recitations, the figure moves down through our crown chakra into the central channel. At the end of the second, they have arrived at our pre-arranged and pre-prepared seat. At the end of the third, that we have the certainty that they will remain steadfast there until we attain the state of enlightenment. Again, we can completely rejoice in that. And then the petals of the lotus fold over and are sealed by a white 5-pronged Vajra. Then that package is surrounded by 3 mantras. The first is the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. The second is the mantra of Manjushri. And the third is the mantra of dependent origination.
sabe tiba da tiba tanja wata ba changso sa kewa do ya da ka jaji mige chubung chudon da kewa da ka jaji ke ro da ka jaji mige chubung chudon da kewa da ka jaji jeba khana ma do da rajen khana ma do ba ne ba kanti sa chedeam chenga ma yenga ma to me tiba da tiba da ga ni shingi che ka so de so da do ba da ka wa chajo se ba la ba da ka sanga da che da ke ne ba kanti sa wa ina da ji thore da thaba da 탐제 캠에 계속 주에 내가 근데 싸워는 봐 장시 답과 정수 삼사我的야고 시우 정수 썼네 아니 지금 류지 나사 생각 동에 중심 그 녀마녀 봐 자롱티레 견탄저 장 가나탄저 다와를 저 바자 차와라 딱까지 뭐다 뉴도 산제 고바토를 교치주도 탐에 나셔 맞아 탐에 나셔 교연 탐제 짠 다바를 잡아시 차도 야고 시고 중소 사고마시.
And then from the figure within, the petals, light rays emanate from the body, speech, and mind, and permeating through, and indeed permeating through every atom of our body, from the soles of the feet to the crown of the head, with the white purifying light, purifying all negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginningless time, including negativities associated with the 10 non-virtues, all of the naturally occurring negativities and those proscribed by the Buddha, the negativities of this life, of previous life, of the lives previous to that, going back to beginningless time, all of the infractions and of our vows, be it the Patimoksha vows, the Bodhisattva vows, or the samayas within the tantric vows, and that all of the disrespect that we have shown to our parents right up to our gurus, and all of the negativities that we have accumulated in any towards all sentient beings, and that are creating obstacles to higher rebirths or the attainment of nirvana itself, that all of the elements within the body are realigned and rebalanced, as are the channels, winds, and drops, that the main issue for us in being able to quickly attain the state of enlightenment, being our ordinary perception, is eradicated and is replaced by pure perception.
Then so shindo to Lundi Nilenga, Lama Shajas and the good Henji chicken channel, so did Lama Shajas and Kula Tosu, some such. So the shindo to send the Nilencha, Lama Shajas and go to the Henji chicken channel, so the same the Lama Shajas and Tula Tosu, Ranga Lunga is Lama Shajas and Kuzon or Yemeku, so they were they were talking about the news may issue some such. And around Nasa Nedia, Negu Tamja Jen, Lama Shajas and Tabesh the Kusu, something. Lama Shajas and Kusu to the war, Yemeku, Nala Rashimeba Samrata, and they took a level, Lama Shajas in the Pato, they were training. And comes on your Simja Tam, Jella Pobala Dene, the Datanja Lama Sanjas and Kusu to the war, Yemeku, the Dagan Nessa and Ned, the new Gunta Lama Shajas and Tabesh the Kusu, some such. What I have a shoot on Simja Tamja, Sanja Kumar to be Tanima did it to Sonaka.
And then through the combination of my own most subtle wind, together as the combination of my own most subtle wind, acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And through the combination of my own most subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And now I see myself, my body, speech, and mind, as inseparable from that of an enlightened being, the enlightened being's body, speech, and mind. This then brings forth a sense of bliss in the mind, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. The place that I am in also is transformed of all fault and degeneration, and is transformed into a pure realm. Then from my own self, realizing that I am lacking any inherent existence whatsoever, sending out light rays equal in number to all the sentient beings in existence, going out into the 3 realms and entering into all those sentient beings, and they spontaneously and immediately arising as fully enlightened beings. And also the places that they are in, they are cleansed of all fault and degeneration, and they are transformed into the pure realms. And this is something that I can completely rejoice in, that this is today is the day that I've been able to fulfill that goal of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. That is something that really is worth rejoicing in.
어느 심지어 탐자 라마산제 어가서 라마샤자 생기게는 고마로 거봐 대치도 수직계와 갈주와 대두고 소소적과 유대는 주바 두상 요 말이 또왜 팔다 점을 섬섬 어때 디딜라데네 대화 대외 동바 대돈 뉴스의 시기 섬섬 어때 공부하자.
And this process of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment, the virtue that has facilitated that, and myself as the agent of that virtue, are completely lacking any objective existence whatsoever, even at the atomical level, and are merely imputed by thought. And so from this then arises again this sense of bliss that combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
Tanda samlo tangwa ni shing ngune khora rinpo ma towa ngune khora wata tende chik yonga sho yonga gyuri gyuwa sho di chedo sosu sanje goma ma towa tamandwa sosu sanje goma towa la rangyo la toni nyingji nyingbo chiga lam gyula ma gyana tamandwa ta tende yinba ta kari chego sana sosu la dewa chungne ta dunghe chungne ta kewa yinba ine ta kawa yinba ine nawa yinba ine tama chiwa yinba ine kandeji cheba yinba ine teta tamche toni nyingji nyingbo chiga lam gyula kebege ine tungela to And
of course, that we realize we're operating at the level of imagination here. This result does not happen that so easily. But I certainly adhere to and I accept the thinking involved here as being something really useful, and I dedicate very, very sincerely that I may quickly attain that state of enlightenment, make it manifest for real, and that this objective of attaining enlightenment is something of an obligation, really. And so therefore I dedicate everything, put everything into it, so that it may happen as quickly as possible with as few obstacles as possible. That means I'm dealing with the happiness and the suffering of the pluses and minuses of life, whether I'm well, whether I'm ill, whether I'm at the verge of death. I will use every possible situation to enhance the love and compassion in my own mind, to dedicate it to generate the causes of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness.
Also,
You are Avalokiteshvara, a great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Lotan Drakpa, at your feet, I make requests.